Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Meg.
My mouse is like not working. Luckily, my computer is a touchscreen, so I'm like, add camera, add audio. Like even my my laptop mouse isn't working. I don't know what's going on.
What a pain in the ass. Are you like, thank God you have the touch screen.
I mean, literally, I'm like, oh, okay.
Your nails look good though while you're doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's so funny.
Hi.
So, hi, I'm super happy to meet you. I don't know why I'm using both hands right now. I think it's because I had a Starbucks, which was maybe not my best idea.
Yes. I literally was on a podcast yesterday, and I always have one cup of caffeinated tea in the morning because honestly, I do believe that they taste the best. And then I just love a hot beverage throughout the day. So I have more tea, and it's almost always decaf because I don't really need it. But for some reason, I was like, I just really wanted like a full calf Earl Grey, and I did it. And I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's talk. Let's go.
Yeah. It's like you think you can full on do it, and then it's like, wait, maybe. Yeah. So it's like hitting me now. I'm like, thank God I'm assuming you like are cool with all the weirdness that is gonna come through my face.
Bring it on. I am here. What? Okay, now look, something is going. Hold on just a second. Something is happening on my I just saw it start hap I'm just gonna turn off my laptop. This is so weird. The equals button is just going on my background.
Oh,
That's
that's
off.
fun.
This is off. Let's see. Sorry, this is so weird, but like,
You're fine.
okay, we're good now. I'm looking at you, and then I can
Mhm.
see in the back because I don't always have my screen all the way open. I just have it right here, which is probably a thing for me to do for my attention. And then all of a sudden, in the like Internet Explorer window, it just goes equal, 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 equal all the way across. My laptop is possessed. Anyway, we're just
Fun time.
tangential today.
Normally how I like to do conversations anyways. Oh,
Me too. Me too.
good. Good. Well, I'm super happy you wanted to do this because I was all like, oh, the timing couldn't have been better considering like the conversations I'm just having in life in general and like the
Yes.
ideas I've been having around this and with our podcast in general.
Yeah.
So
So
uh
excited.
yeah, so I'm just like I have thoughts on where I want to go, but really I was hoping this could just be a great conversation that people can listen in on and basically go like, "Oh, that's what's happening. Oh, this is what I need to do. Okay, I'm not alone."
Perfect. Yes, yes. And that's always been my number one thing with any mental health, no matter where I've been specializing in substance use or with adolescents or anything, is that like just talking about it more is the biggest thing because I think I know so many people continue to struggle because they're like, it's just me, or I'm going to use this, ableist term, I'm crazy. And it's like, no, you're not. And some of
Yeah.
these things are a superpower and we got to figure out how to harness it and redirect it sometimes, or sometimes you're absolutely not alone, but it's just so tough because we just continue. And even now we're making so many strides in mental health and mental wellness and opening conversations, but we also have so many people in the United States who are just like actively fighting against acceptance and discussion and health. And so we just continue
Oh,
to fight the good fight, right?
yeah, and right there, like that's the thing I would love to be able to lean into just from my own raw experience. Like I maybe need to tread carefully because I could still get really choked up talking about some of these things because I'm just at the beginning of it. Like I don't know how much Mark shared with you because I should have gone back and actually watched all the things. I just didn't yet.
It's good. This is
'Cause-
nice. It's a fresh discussion. Then he just mentioned, he was like, actually, do you mind if I put you in touch with Katie? Because everything that you just said, I feel like would like to talk about. That was kind of it. He was like,
okay.
she's on her own journey. I think she'd be super into talking to you. And I was like, of
Oh,
course.
okay,
Because I
good.
love talking to him so much. I was like, send me up. Go ahead.
Okay, good, good. Well, I don't know if he told you too, we used to always interview together and we can't swing it because we got, it's too much. If we're both doing the same thing all day, then it was like bananas. And I miss
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
that together, but then it allows me to, occasionally I still get to record, but I don't as much. And now I'm looking to do more of this to expand on some of this stuff when it comes to this. Like if something piques my attention, and this, like I said, it has to do a lot with what's happening now, and I'll fill you in. But part of that too is so many of our female clients, I feel like I'm sitting there and I'm like, you have fucking ADHD, or you have,
Yeah.
I'm like, all these women entrepreneurs, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Um, I have a potty mouth. Are you okay?
Heck yeah. No, fuck yeah. I was on a different show yesterday and I literally was like, that's some bullshit. And I was like, wait, can I cuss here?
Yeah, right. You gotta
She
double
said,
check
yeah, so
those
it's fine.
things.
But oh, no, bring it on fully.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no judgment and I love a nice F-bomb here and there. So,
Sweet. It's so therapeutic for me. It's like, so yeah, so one client of ours was actually diagnosed, and
mhm,
I adore this woman. Her name's Casey, and I actually have been in conversation with her. I've worked with her for like a little bit over a year, and she's sort of in our world still, but she's not like actively in our group program. And I've kind of gone into that space where we're like friends too.
mhm,
And so I've gone to her. It's been weird because I've been her business coach. But
mhm.
I know she's the only person I know that's been diagnosed ADHD. And that's where like I feel like all of a sudden all these lights are coming on. Recognizing um how do I put it? That some of the things that I thought that I didn't even realize were happening within my brain,
Mhm.
it's like they just are getting explained to me, and it's simply because I've been paying attention to. I got targeted with like ADHD ads and all of that. So, and
Yes.
Mark has always picked on me, calling me ADHD, and I just take that as like this flippant whatever, because I tend to bunny trail, I forget a lot of things, like all the things that people chalk up to like character flaws or
Yes.
absent-mindedness.
Or like disrespect because I'm not paying attention because I don't think that you're interesting. And it's like, no, it's that I'm not, and that it's not an excuse. I say this a lot too, if like hurt people. And so
Yeah.
therefore, like that's not a thing. And like just because you've been hurt doesn't mean that you carte blanche freely get to hurt people. It's that we are aware of it and we make changes intentionally to do that. But it's also like,
Yeah.
how do we get in that space where how we can communicate with people, but we're also intentional about trying to change it. But like people understand, like, I'm not just like, you're boring.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't care. I think that's it. It's this I absolutely care. And because Mark and I work together and are in relationship, which by the way, we're getting married on Friday.
Getting married
So
this
that's
weekend.
yeah.
Hey. I'm so happy for you all.
So,
It's so great.
yeah. So that's added another twist into things because I'm trying to like
Oh, it's
get
too
this
much.
shit done for Friday. And
Yeah. So,
um
so like too much in a good way, but also like just like okay. Too much.
well, and I all this stuff that I thought was just part of my personality. I realize I've actually been compensating so because I've shown up really well. I had like I like academically, it's fantastic. Like I had a corporate career that I like advanced in really quickly. Like I did all those like gold star things, but I don't think like I realized how hard it was for me too. Um, and that at the end I was like, oh, I'm bored. Like I quit my corporate job because I literally hit this place where I was like, I can't believe I just fucking got here. And then I was in it for a year. I was like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm looking back with a different lens at all these things that I just thought was how, again, a personality thing,
Yes.
and recognizing like I live energetically, I'm quite tired. And no matter what I do, I've always been exhausted. Like I can't remember not being tired, even though I'm an active person, I take care of myself well. I am just fucking tired. And it
Yeah.
through just doing this research, because again, of course, I dove in like super intensely this past like month. I'm now seeing, oh, I think I'm tired because I spent my whole life compensating.
Yeah.
Um, because I can show up, but I never recognized. that in order to show up, I'm having to tamp down or really, really work at um at creating the internal state that's necessary in order to be to do the things.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm feeling like like know what to say or do, or I feel very capable, but the inability to properly express it sometimes. It's as if there's
Mhm.
all these things. So
Right.
I say all that because I now see it for what it is. I am not diagnosed with anything. Oh, and that's what I was going to get to. I started to share a bit with my sister, whose name is also Meg, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she basically was shut the shit down. She was like, I don't want to hear any of it. I don't buy into any of it. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Um,
How old is your sister?
she's 42.
Okay, I was just curious. I was having this conversation with a new client yesterday,
Hmm.
and I'm one of the lucky ones, and I want to give, first of all, I want to give all the credit to my parents for putting their foot down and being like, no, something is not functioning within normal limits, and we need to get her some help. And I got
Hmm.
diagnosed in 1994 when I was in fourth grade, and girls just don't have neurodivergence. We just don't. Didn't you
Hmm.
know? We don't have that. And anybody who has ADHD, that's just throwing pills at hyper kids, and teachers being lazy and not knowing classroom management, and parents not knowing,
Hmm.
like, that's how we grew up. And so
Yeah.
I am such an anomaly. Like, I am sure, or maybe I feel special. I don't know. But in having these conversations with people, we're seeing so many people who are being either diagnosed, or whether or not you have the diagnosis too. That's another conversation, right? Like,
Hmm.
the diagnosis isn't the issue for me. Like, I also was talking to somebody once, and they're like, hey, can you diagnose autism? And I was like, well, in the state that you live in, I'm actually not legally allowed to. But let's
Hmm.
talk about the things that we'll talk about with your neurodivergence,
Hmm.
and the things that what are your goals, and what are the things are we going to look towards that. And like, if that diagnosis is really helpful and important to you, then by all means, we will find you somebody who will do those tests and get you the official tag.
Hmm.
But for me, it's about the work that we're doing and the things that we're going to do to help that. And
Hmm.
so that's why I'm always careful, because I do mention ADHD a lot in my social media, but I also want to, I use distractibility a lot.
Yes.
And I
Hmm.
also really believe, and like, one day I'm going to get that PhD, once I'm not paying $2,700 a month for daycare. Um, God bless the United States, right? But I really believe that there is something considered like perinatal onset
Yeah.
ADHD, where like, I see a lot of my people who are in fertility struggles or pregnancy, and we know in pregnancy that your brain physically changes. Read the
Yeah.
book Mother Brain by Chelsea Conboy, all of that. Um, and I believe that there is something, like, it's possible that it's not just throughout, oh, well, if it was in childhood, like, things are changing. We continue to go through catastrophic, once in a generation things every couple of years.
Hmm.
Things are different now. We're having all of these struggles in West Asia and the Sudan and everything, where it's like, where we used to say, like, it's good to have perspective, but we don't participate in the trauma Olympics. Like, it's really hard to sit with that balance too these days. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I've gone on a really long tangent. That's my
No, I like
ADHD.
it.
I love to talk and hear myself pontificate, but I just really hold space coming back to, but I can't hold on to where we were, to your
Yeah.
sister saying, like, that's not a thing. It's not real. You just have a character flaw. You just aren't paying enough attention, whatever that might be that she's saying. And it's like, it's not just something for people to say, like, sorry, I'm going to go on one more tangent. I promise I'm coming right
Oh,
back. But have you ever
I
seen
love
Schitt's Creek?
tangents. Do them. Do them up.
Have you ever seen Schitt's Creek?
Yes.
Okay, you remember when David has a panic attack, and both David and Alexis, sorry, I just turned on my Alexa, Alexis,
Uh-huh.
um, are like, panic attacks are just things that people make up for, like, rich, famous people to get over whatever. And it's like, I'm not saying that people don't appropriate mental health concerns to get out of things like drunk driving or whatever. That's an episode of Ted Lasso, but like,
Yeah.
or a comment on an episode of Ted Lasso, but they're also very real. And so it's
Yeah.
really nice when we can start to normalize and acknowledge that, while certainly not everything is one thing, that these things are real and they are impacting us, and they have been impacting us, but we haven't known it. Like,
Right.
when you would say, like, very recently is when you just started realizing, like, this is what this is. I have a client as well who's in her 30s, And she was talking, and I was like, so were you diagnosed with ADHD and like growing up? And she's like, no. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to talk about your distractibility and your focus goals and
Mhm.
all of that. And so out of curiosity, she went and talked to her mom, and she was like, hey, how was I as a kid? And her mom
Mhm.
wrote a literal screen's worth of things that she used to do when she was growing up. That just, again, ADHD diagnostic criteria, ADHD diagnostic criteria, ADHD diagnostic criteria. And she
Mhm.
emailed it to me, and she was like, so this is what my mom said. And
Oh my God.
I
God
was
bless
just
her
like,
mom though for
I know.
paying
That's literally
attention.
where I was going, Katie. I was like, and I
Oh,
feel so
sorry.
bad for her mom. That's literally what I was gonna say.
Oh,
Like, she didn't know. She didn't know. And she
yeah.
was told not to. And when she mentioned something to someone, maybe I haven't talked to her mom, but like, she was blown off. She was told, oh, you're just lazy and you don't want to deal with your kid. Or you're just blaming your teacher for poor classroom management or whatever it was. I don't know what her mom
Mhm.
said, but I'm just saying, like, that's literally where I was going, where you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for her, obviously, but I feel so bad for her mom, not knowing all we want is the best for our kids.
Yeah. Well, thinking of that time, like I go back to in the in the 90s, well, and even late 80s for me with school, I'm thinking back to there was just like this culture of I don't even know the right words for it, but
Mm,
like it just wasn't, they didn't seem to want to dive into the possibilities for any kid, or
mhm,
there was more of an attitude of just deal with it, or
mhm,
especially I
mhm.
would say just more for girls, and
Yes.
maybe it's a cultural where you are in the country thing, and I'm over in West Michigan, and it was like you could, like, I could have been punched in the face by a boy at school, and they would have been like, well, he's on the wrestling team, so we're
Uh,
going to just let that go.
uh, yeah. That's, I think that that really was a lot of things with a lot. I mean, don't get me too much on my patriarchy soapbox, but I really, even like I have clients come in, they're like, well, my husband's love language is physical touch. And I'm like, honey, the love languages were based in Christian patriarchy so that women, and that's not all, very rarely is one thing, all one thing, but
Yeah.
like, you need to give your husband more sex. Like Glennon Doyle was literally told after her husband cheated on her, and also she's attracted to women, but that wasn't where she was at the time,
Hmm.
that she went to a counselor, a Christian counselor, and was told, she said, I don't want to touch him. I'm upset and I don't like it. And he was like, just give him blowjobs. I can say
Oh,
blowjobs.
fuck. No.
Yeah, just give him blowjobs, because like penetrative sex was too much, but he still has needs. And so we have been taught historically to shut our mouths, sit still, look cute, be polite, smile and nod,
Hmm.
fawn, fight,
Hmm.
flight, freeze. Now we've added fawn, because
Yeah.
that's the thing that we do when somebody says something uncomfortable, because
Mhm.
our fear is, one, physical violence, and two, if there's any sort of any violence, that no one's going to have our back, because historically everyone has had a man's back. And
Oh.
so then we're like, oh my gosh, that's so funny that you just called me fat. Oh my gosh, you're so funny. Oh, you like my boobs? You're so funny. Oh my gosh. Because what are we going to do? Don't fucking talk about my tits, asshole. What's
Oh,
going to,
yeah.
what's
Oh,
going to,
oh, the second you did that, back, I'm for sure, could take us back to, it's like 1995. You said that to somebody, and like the bullying that would happen, or the reaction
yeah.
would always be intense and awful.
Uh-huh.
And it was just
So,
normal.
so we've learned that. We've learned all of that in turn. I mean, all of these things, this is not even a tangent. This is all of the stuff that
Mhm.
peppered into our lives that got us into a space where we felt like we couldn't actively participate in our mental wellness, or I'm loud and wild, or my handwriting is terrible. And thankfully, a psychiatrist was once like, because your hand can't keep up with your brain. I'm like, oh, is that why my handwriting looks like a boy? By the way, always growing. Like everything has to be
Yeah.
gender binary and all of that, which again is a little more of a tangent, but I just
Yeah.
hold all the space for the people out there who were biologically female or identify as female or whatever it was, which of course you weren't allowed to do any of that in the 80s and
Oh.
90s. Well, but I just want to hold space for people now. But yeah,
Mhm.
we grew up and we were told all of these things. And girls don't have autism. Girls
Mhm.
don't have ADHD because
Oh,
why
we
don't
just
they?
talked too much. I think that's the one thing I keep going back to, like
Yes.
consistently,
Yes.
um, always, my report card or any conference, it would be, academically great, can't shut up in class, but always in trouble. Like, I can't tell you how many sentences I had to write. I will not talk in class. And the feeling like that would come over me each time.
Mhm.
Oh God, I swear I have a trauma response to writing because of that.
I really believe that. For me, all A's need to be in conduct. That was always our joke in the house. Like,
Mhm.
all A's need to be in conduct. There's Meg talking too much. And it wasn't, I don't honestly, I really don't say this because my parents are very much still alive and very involved in my life and they're amazing. I
Yeah.
don't feel like I'm defending them. I honestly feel like it was some sort of trauma response for them. Like, you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
Like, all A's need to be in conduct. That's our chatty Meg. Like, we call it Meganese. Like, because we
Yeah.
can't, I'm talking so fast that you can't understand me. And like, that's
Mhm.
just a thing. Like, we all did the best we could, and how dare you. And gosh, yeah, my sixth grade teacher like yelled at me once. It was wild. She like pulled me out of an after school basketball thing and she called me rude and disrespectful, and luckily my mom like watched it happen, so she followed us back and she overheard it, and she was like, I'm gonna need you to stop, which is amazing because my mom is like the last person to advocate for it. I don't want to say she wouldn't, she obviously did stand up for us, but like she's
Yeah.
very, we could go on. Like, she
Mhm.
can't read the book Adult Children of Immature Parents because it's too much her.
Yeah.
She's fine. But yeah, and so I just want to hold all of the space for everybody of like, whether or not you have this diagnosis, whether or not you had it then, like, we gotta name it and claim it and own it, the
Mhm.
distraction. We gotta understand what's going on. You're not a bad person. You're not disinterested. You're not flighty. You're not flaky.
Mhm.
And maybe you are. Maybe some of that, not you, y'all, listener, dear
Yes.
listener, maybe you are flaky. Maybe you make
Mhm.
plans and you don't show up. Maybe some of that is your anxiety, but also untreated ADHD manifests as anxiety. So it's not a siloed thing either,
Mhm.
where I have anxiety and or I have ADHD. If you have any sort of distractibility and you're not taking care of it, it manifests as anxiety.
Okay, that right there. I think that's super important because again, what I feel like I'm witnessing working with clients who are not coming to me for any of this,
Yeah.
but to help them, we're working on their ability to grow their business. Now, this is an unforget yourself world, not in
Yeah, yeah,
my other podcasting world.
sure.
So in this like mindset world, it's like I have to fix this part of me to be able to follow through. And it's continually I'm coming across this where I'm like, no, there's something else
Mhm.
going on. Like this
Yes.
is more than just that.
Yeah.
And I'm having a moment of it right now because I know you just said something that I was like, oh, that thing. And now I've already forgotten it.
Yeah.
And being able to recognize like that's not because what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a character flaw. It's a result of how, like, I know now that's just what br- that's how my brain
Yeah.
works.
Well, and I don't want to say like, oh my gosh, I know everything because I practice virtually. I don't know why I play with my hair so much when I try to act hoity-toity, but here I am.
I'm here for it.
But I do this for a living, both
Mhm.
in my podcast and as a therapist and as a mental wellness coach. So I have people often, dare I say all the time, go on these wild tangents, and I don't say wild, they're not, but like to them, they're very embarrassed. Oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
still talking. Oh my gosh, I went so far, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but that is within my practice where I'm like, put a pin there, keep going, put a pin there, keep going. But okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. And I'm usually pretty good at coming back. And if I'm not, or if I feel like, oh, we have so many pins, I literally will start writing stuff down. And I'm pretty good at that too. Like, I can pick up my
Yeah.
pen right now and I'm starting to write, and you can't even tell that I'm doing any of that, can you? And I'm really good at that. Like, these are the skills that I have taught myself and through practice and my own therapy and all of these things. Like, I have notepads. I have a post-it note thing on my computer. Now I do an acknowledge. Lists alone are not enough. You have to do more. Otherwise you'll have 8 lists and none of the stuff will get done.
Yeah.
So, but that really is it too. And
You mean like
again,
that?
yes, yes, yes. And that's the thing. I can't tell you how many, and I'm not sitting here saying I'm perfect. Like, please, I've said that before. I
Mhm.
said it with Mark. Like, I'm not sitting here and be like, guys, I figured it all out. I've got it all. Listen to me. But I do have a lot of things that have helped me. And I can really recognize when I get lazy. Like, my husband was gone to Italy for 10 days and my parents were here for 2 weeks as throughout part of that and a little before. And I just got in an energy of like hanging out with the parents and doing a lot of housework, and like, and I could just, I was so all over the place. I luckily didn't have a lot of anxiety, but I think that's because I was really grounded with my adoring parents being here. But
Yeah.
like, you can really tell. And so all of that tangent of that I just went on myself was to come back and say, I feel really confident in my ability to tell when someone's paying attention to me
Yeah.
virtually. And I felt like you were listening to me. So you saying that you forgot what I said, but you were really excited about it doesn't in any way to me imply that you weren't interested. It just means that that's not how your brain was working in that moment. And I think
Yeah.
the more that more that we can internalize that as not something to be ashamed of, I am not bad because of that. And then also other people are open to the idea of, hey, I might have to repeat myself sometimes, or that
Yeah.
topic might be lost because I don't know what it was that I said that rung a bell for you. So
Mhm.
I don't know. And maybe it'll come up later and maybe it won't, but that's not anything that either one of us did wrong.
Oh,
Just
okay. That right there, you'd said I'm not bad because of that. I think that that's one of the things I want us to be able to like get across and touch
yeah,
on the handful of things that someone might think of like I'm a bad business owner or I'm bad at
yes,
whatever because of
right.
that. And it's so funny because even as you said that, you had said anxiety and my brain immediately went, that was it. It was
Yes. Yes.
and
And that sometimes that's magical too. And I just say stuff and you'll say stuff and I'm like, oh, that's what it was.
yeah. Well, this is the thing that's hit me because I have never I want to say after my oldest was born, so my oldest is almost 18, which is crazy to me. Um Around then I started to pay more attention to how I showed up in the world. Like there was again, I had that feeling of like lights coming on and recognizing that like generationally, the women in my family really showed up um, with a lot of worry, and the worry was used as a form of caring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I unraveled that, and I can't remember exactly how. I know I was in therapy and I just paid attention to myself. Like there was a lot that happened, but I can't recall a lot of it because lots of babies in a short amount of time,
Yeah.
unhealthy marriage. There's a lot, so I didn't
Yeah.
retain a lot of details. But I
Uh-huh.
know on the other side of it, like in general, I have been somebody that has set down my worry, and I haven't existed as somebody who feels particularly anxious. I
Mhm.
can witness it and hold like see it when it's unfolding in
Yes.
my family and kind of distance myself and recognize that it's okay,
Mhm.
they feel like they're being loving and this is their way that they can feel they can control or all the things.
Sure.
But recently that has instead I don't think I worry, but my body is an anxious it's full of anxiety. Like I feel it and I've never had that. And that's part of what's called my attention to this. So then when you said that that's one of the sort of symptoms of all this, I'm
Mhm.
like, oh. And there's a part of me that's wondering is this all how much of this is also amplified because of hormones? Like I think I'm becoming perimenopausal.
Mhm.
I am not sure. Periods are
Oh,
still fairly regular,
sure.
but I'm also 44.
Sure.
Um, and it's like this confluent, how am I saying that right? Everything coming together of one at once.
Confluence.
Thank you. Words are hard. Of all of these things, and I feel like I'm sitting here with my own experience, and then I'm having these interactions on the
Mhm.
regular with other women where
Mhm.
I'm recognizing my own experience in them.
Mhm.
And I just there's I don't know what to do with it other than talk about it.
Mhm. I again, I come back to naming it. Again,
Mhm.
not diagnosing it, and I want to be really
Yeah.
clear about the difference between those because certainly, like, depending on the state that you're in, I'm licensed in 8 states, so well, Michigan, I am not. I know what the state you're in, but dear
Yeah.
listener,
Yeah.
I am licensed to be able to tell people whether or not they have ADHD. But
Yeah.
um, that to me, like the other example, just to really drive that home, is like when I worked at a rehab here in Dallas.
Mhm.
Some people really find a lot of energy and owning and claim ownership of like, I am an addict. And that's really powerful for them, and that's great. And some people find that to be abhorrent in a number of ways because of the stigma, et cetera. Every person is very different. And for me,
Mhm.
I'm like, I couldn't care less what you call yourself. And also, we don't say I am, we say that I have, but fair
Yeah.
enough. With addict, you may also call yourself whatever you want. And that's the thing, right? Like, if you have this, and this that are causing this, and this,
Mhm.
whether or not somebody's willing to slap a label on you, it doesn't matter. Let's focus on it. Let's pay attention to it. Let's call it out. Let's
Mhm.
recognize it. And I do this too. I mean, when you get a chance to listen to my episode with Mark, I, or if you do, because I acknowledge I have lots of busy stuff going on, but like, I acknowledge, like, I really struggle with throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to make things work, because as I mentioned earlier, I had paid $2,700 a month in daycare, and
Mhm.
I own my own business, and God bless my husband for having a stable income. And so there is that panic that struggles when we get out of the growth mindset, when we get out of the abundance mindset. A lot of us are meeting with people like you because we need help, because what we've been doing
Yeah.
hasn't been working, but we're coming in with all this anxiety because we've been trying to do all of these things. We're throwing all the spaghetti and rigatoni and gnocchi and everything because we just need to make this work, because we're passionate and we don't want to go back to a 9 to 5 in an office with a boss and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so just being able to be in a space where we can claim whatever it is, perhaps name it, is so important. And it's nice that you're able to have the space to be like, hey, Meg, have you ever thought that you might have some issues with focus? Like, oh no, I haven't thought about that, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that there's this way that you can take it and like step out of the label for those that resist, or
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know exactly how to put it, but there's, if
Yeah.
they have anything, any charge around it, maybe that's the way to put it.
Well, there's so much stigma, and I like the way it's really nice these days, like neurodivergence. So I have a good friend on Instagram. I only know her through Instagram, but she calls
Yeah.
herself a neurospicy witch. And I love that. Like,
Yeah.
neurospicy, right? Like,
Yes.
that's such an umbrella for, I'm not going to sit down and look at you in the eye like you would on, I almost said iStep, but that's only for people in Indiana. Like, I'm not going to be the best person to take the SAT and follow exactly what you're doing, because that's not how my brain works, but I
Yeah.
can engage with you and teach you some things and be exciting and fun, but I also may not check all the boxes that people need in a classroom setting. And
Mhm.
that's also okay. And so I love neurospicy. I think it's a really beautiful way of describing it.
Yeah. Okay. That word has always made me smile. And
Love it.
I'm sitting here with this sort of, as the
I mean, I literally
million.
have chili peppers hanging from my microphone. So, like, as my husband used to manage New Mexico as a state.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just kind of brings it all together for me.
I love it. Well, it's, I think again, this in this online space, for some reason, that's where those who would be neurospicy seem to be gathering. And
Mhm.
well, I shouldn't act surprised. I think it's because there's more of a desire to shape their environment,
Mhm.
or I'll say our environment,
Mhm.
and have more control over it because it hasn't worked outside of it. Like to be able to show up and deliver from 9 to 5 is fucking impossible or exhausting for
It just is.
I
Well, and
think
I
for the
do want to go
vast
on just a little bit
majority.
of it. As I want to go on a little bit of a tangent just for some more normalization for people. There is something called
Mhm.
oppositional defiant disorder, and it's really interesting. The nurse practitioner I used to see for my allergies in Kansas City, well,
Yeah.
Overland Park or whatever, we sat and talked for like half an hour, because she was
Uh-huh.
talking about her children have a diagnosis with ADHD, and I was talking about my own.
Mhm.
And like, oppositional defiant disorder is a separate diagnosis, but I do, again, don't have a PhD, haven't done the research on this, want to acknowledge and put a pin in that, but
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a subset of ADHD. I mean, I literally was just telling you about a sixth grade teacher who pulled me out of a basketball game to scream at me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was what, sixth grade, so I was 11. So anyway, whatever. But like,
Mhm.
I hold all of the space for my oppositional defiant tendencies. No one's ever given
Yeah.
me a diagnosis, but that's the thing for me. And I've been really open about that in a number of shows that I've been on, when people are like, what encouraged you to do private practice? And I'm like, well, first of all, I just want to sit and talk to people. That's what I want to
Mhm.
do. I sit and talk to a person, I do their paperwork, I send it off, I sit and talk to them, I get up and stretch and pee and get water, right?
Yeah.
Take take care of yourself. But there is something to be said for that too. And I think that's why a number of us are trying to get into this space where we can have this asynchronous income, where we can share our passions with people, but we're
Mhm.
not beholden to anybody. Because the idea of having a boss, like, I got in so many arguments with some of my bosses. Like one of my bosses, literally, she was younger than I was, and
Yeah.
she told one of our utilization review people, she was like, I'm kind of scared of Meg. Like not in a physical way, but like in
Yeah.
our interactions. And I took it as a compliment. Like we are still somewhat in touch, but like
Hmm.
not like I'm afraid Meg's gonna punch me in the face, because that's not a thing that I do, but just like
Yeah.
anytime she would come to me and be like, oh, we're gonna overpopulate your group. And I'd be like, no, we're not. What can we do instead? Or,
Hmm.
hey, you need to do this thing that goes outside of best practices, very much because the owners of the company or the hospital want to make more money. I'm gonna be like, so we're not gonna do that either. Like what else can we do that doesn't include decreasing patient value and quality of care?
Yeah.
And people don't like that. People, now that
Mhm.
person was always, at least I wouldn't say if she's ever listening or knows she'll know who I am talking about if she does listen. She
Mhm.
was always like, yeah, no, I hear you. No, I hear you. What can we do? Some other people
Yeah.
couldn't care less that I've dealt with. They're like, no,
Oh, yeah.
bottom line is bottom line. And that's it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, so then I don't want to work in a hospital. I don't want to work in an environment where you keeping the lights on impacts my ability to provide the best mental health care and
Yeah.
treatment. And that's been a problem for me in the last decade or so that I've been a social worker.
Okay. This I think I want to lean into, and I think this might end up growing to more than what I thought. Because I think if like that particular thing, that right there, I think is such a big impetus for people, for like our
Mhm.
audience,
Yeah.
like to identify with.
Mhm.
Um, God, that feels like such a big deal. Because even as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. Because the I would
Yeah.
say now this is the experience I'm having all the time. So I'm having it in real time now. You
Yeah.
gave that information, that term is new for me.
Mhm.
Now I look back and I'm like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. I immediately thought of,
I don't
I
know if your
said,
mother is here, but like email your mom or your caregiver whoever raised you and be like, hey, have I
yeah,
ever experienced anything like this? Email, like, right?
yeah. Because I'm thinking I said I'd left my corporate job. That was also, I wanted to be home with my babies. It was right at like the same time.
Of
And
course.
yet
Yeah.
those things would happen. I had one time, I remember, so I had a budget because I ran community development for a regional bank, which meant the funds that I managed were meant to go towards nonprofits and community organizations to help support the efforts that we weren't aligned with. Like, so I had to come up with a kind of comprehensive plan every year on how we were going to interact within the community, and did it serve their needs and our needs? Where was that alignment? And then provide funding accordingly. And I would do that through relationship building, and then also through grant giving. Like I would get letters every day asking for money.
Yeah.
And um, and while my budget was small, I kept getting cut every year. Um, there were a few times like I would say no because my budget was cut and it didn't fit within the parameters I set. And
Mhm.
the regional CEO would override me because, like, one in particular, he's like, her parents called me and were upset about it, and her parents were influential in the community. So
God
that,
bless the USA.
oh, fuck. And like, I pushed back and it
Mhm.
never went well. And I was like, fuck this bullshit. Don't give me a budget and then tell me to create a plan and then be like, just kidding. We're going to override you because her mommy and daddy called, like those sorts of things.
That's exactly what I was describing as well. Like we know based on longitudinal studies that this is best practice for this setting and this level of care.
Mhm.
But JK, we're going to add 5 extra kids because we don't want to pay for an extra therapist. So
And you
go
get paid
ahead and
more.
have 20 something kids in your group, right? Like it's that
Mhm.
thing where like you have set an established boundary or expectation or quality of service or care or whatever your job is, and then someone swoops in because it's more convenient for them, and we just struggle with that. And I'm not just saying like all
Mhm.
neurospacey people are elevated in their in their ethics, and
Oh,
but when something doesn't make sense to us,
yeah.
it really doesn't make sense to us. And
Yeah.
that digging the heels in piece, I really think, again, this is not a study,
Mhm.
but I really think oppositional defiant tendencies
Mhm.
are a subset diagnostic criteria of ADHD. And they got rid of ADD a while ago, so there are certain implications of that as well. Everything is under the ADHD umbrella now, so maybe some people don't meet those criteria, but they would have a different signifier. Anyway, one day,
Yeah.
PhD. But yeah, I just feel for that. And I think that, like, we know sleep begets sleep, like for
Yeah.
babies, right? And the better they sleep, the more they're going to sleep. And I think this is the same thing here, but in the reverse, in terms of sleep is a good thing, where like our frustrations have led us to these poor interpersonal interactions with people who are supervisors or peers, which lead us to wanting to do our own thing, but then lead us to that, what is the word that I'm looking for? When you're, desperation,
Mhm.
which leads us to throwing the spaghetti, which leads to the chaotic and twirly, which leads to the anxiety, which leads to us panic mode, freaking out, but also
Mhm.
really passionate about the thing that we're doing, but we don't understand Instagram algorithms. So, bleh.
Yes. Well, and then I'm wondering what the interplay of that is with then this you're I'm gonna have to have you come in and correct me on how to say this, but it's the
Yeah.
oh shoot. It's that need the rejection dysmorphia sort of what
Uh-huh.
is that term? There's a term I just learned and I was like, oh, this is it. It's this idea of
Mm-hmm.
the seeing any form of rejection to in a
Rejection
much higher
sensitive,
degree. Go ahead.
rejection sensitive dysmorphia.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So
That.
dysmorphia is like when I'm going to say this wrong too, because it's not my specialty, but like when you've used something in a way that is, dare I use the word within a word, but like kind of morphed in a way that's not met within natural or within normal air quotes, big air quotes, if anyone's just listening,
Yeah.
limits. Whereas dysphoria is that like feeling rejected, feeling like a failure. Yeah. The opposite of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. God, I love like understanding the makeup of words. It's so helpful. Okay.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, that's overly simplified, but yeah,
Okay. So
which is a
that
big thing for people with focus and distractibility issues or ADHD diagnosis, certainly. Yeah.
well, this is where I wonder if this is an underdiagnosed or not very well understood.
Sure.
I can't say the words. Not understood very well, or
Yeah.
not recognized experience for people. This is
Yes.
again one of those moments where I'm looking back going, "Oh my God, that has hindered my ability to, or it's caused me to people please." And again, this is a
There it
trait I'm
is.
seeing, yes, in so many, especially not just women. I'm not going to say this is nearly exclusive to women because I feel like if
Absolutely not. Very much
yeah.
agree. Absolutely
Yeah,
not.
there's been plenty of men that I've worked with that have had
Yes.
this and
Yes.
unraveling that. But I
Mhm.
think the missing piece might be this understanding of this right here.
Mhm. Well, and I also want to throw in, we are just getting all of the, I could talk to you for like 6 more hours.
Right.
But I know you have a wedding to plan. But I like that to me is such an interesting thing as well. I've heard a lot recently on Instagram of like, hey, if you were in the gifted and talented program growing up, how's that basically how is that how's that rejection sensitive dysphoria coming for you? Or like how is that perfectionism and the procrastination that leads to that
Yeah.
going for you? Because we were told growing up that we were smart and we were doing it from a fixed mindset because it was basically how it was portrayed to us. And again, I am not coming from my teachers in the 90s, maybe my sixth grade teacher a little bit, or I'm not,
Same. It's that
maybe her a
damn
little bit.
sixth grade teacher, I tell you.
Maybe her a little bit. We could have some conversations. But the rest of them,
Yeah,
I really do believe that they were doing the best they can with an annoying
absolutely.
child who could not shut up and would correct them if I thought they were wrong. And sometimes they freaking were,
Mhm.
fucking were. But they taught us in fourth grade, also, no, was it fourth grade or fifth grade that I got? Fourth grade. They told us that you are the smart ones. And it came from a fixed mindset. And I
Mhm.
feel bad for the kids. I watched an episode of Abbott Elementary School not too long ago,
Mhm.
where Gregory Eddy, who I apologize, I don't remember the actor's name, but he is magnificent, spectacular perfection. He was talking about his character. He says, I wasn't in it, and it basically made me feel like I was never going to be smart enough, and I like wouldn't be good enough to get out of where I was, and that's it. And it's like we were taught We were told from a fixed mindset, you're the smart ones, you are not the smart ones. And we had to hold up to that. So in 7th grade, when algebra started kind of not making sense to me because math up until that point was a breeze,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a failure. And I couldn't tell anybody
Mm-hmm.
because I was going to let everyone down because I was the smart one.
Yeah.
But that I literally have the book. I'm looking at the book mindset right now because it's like, I don't want to say my Bible sacrilegiously, and I don't want to offend anybody who reads the Bible, but like it is like the thing that I look at and think like you can always grow and learn more. Like one of the things I've taught my children is I can't do it yet. Like they don't say if they can't say I can't do it. I can't do it yet. I can't reach that yet. I can't tie my shoes yet, whatever it is, but yet,
Mm-hmm.
because we can always grow and learn. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that comes back to this rejection issue is that we were told that we were smart and that you could and that you had it. And then how dare you not have it? So then we procrastinate, we push things off because if it's not perfect, I can't turn it in because then everyone will know that I'm not perfect, which fuels that shame piece of I am a bad person. I am not focusing on you because I don't think you're important. Whatever else those conversations we were having earlier are,
Yeah.
that all fuels in on itself. And people are really starting to realize like, wow, that really fucked me up.
Yes. And now I think this ties into the whole idea of like needing to feel validated sometimes because we look
Yeah.
back on that and there's so much pain from it, but it's also, at least my experience of it was I had I I felt a lot of pain around that, but I never really said it out loud and it felt like, well, so other people had stuff and it's not that big of a deal and I'm just being overly
Mhm.
sensitive.
Mhm.
And that was reinforced by if I did say anything, that's exactly what was communicated.
You got it. And so that's where we find ourselves not being able to be emotionally vulnerable, intellectually vulnerable. I feel
Mhm.
like I was reading a book by Whitney Cummings. Don't know what she's up to these days, so I don't know
I think she
but
had a
anyway.
baby.
Oh, did she really? Good for her if that's what I assume that's what she wanted. So good for her. I love her and I love her book. Oh, is it over here? I don't know what it's called. I'm so sorry. But anyway, I read it and it's so good. And she was talking about like it's her goal every day. I'm still looking over here because I want to be able to find it. Like I'm
Yeah.
fine, not really, or I'm fine, just ask me, or something like that. Anyway,
Yeah.
Google, dear listener, please Google. And she says, like, it's my goal to say I don't know at least once a day or in every conversation because I want people to understand, like, I sit on this high place in the jobs that I do now. And I
Mhm.
never want somebody to feel like they can't ask me questions. And I never want anybody to feel like I know everything. And I want to remind myself that I don't fucking know everything. And that's okay. And like, I love to be able to say that. I don't want to say I love an opportunity to apologize to my children because that means I did something bad
Oh
or
God, I know what you
something
mean.
outside of, let me rephrase.
Mhm.
We could go into a long tangent about mom guilt versus parenting guilt. Mom guilt is not a real thing, but parenting guilt certainly is. Like,
Yeah.
if I did something that is outside of my scope of values, um, I will apologize to my children. And I don't love that I did something out of my scope of values, but I do give myself grace that I'm human and not a robot. And I get the
Mhm.
opportunity to show my children that you don't have to be perfect and that you can hold yourself accountable and that you can apologize and that you can try to do
Mhm.
things differently next time. And we
Mhm.
are in this space. I just did a reel on this yesterday, actually, where like we just feel like there has to be a bad guy. There's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and it's binary. And if I ask
Mhm.
you to do something different, that means I think you're the bad guy and I think I'm the good guy. And it's like, no, it means that I mean, this is what boundaries are in general. Not always. Sometimes the boundary is you have treated me like shit forever and I'm closing the door and bye. And that really is a thing too. But a lot
Mhm.
of times a boundary is set because we want to keep you in our lives. We want to enjoy the time around you more. And if you
Mhm.
stop doing this thing or start doing this other thing more, I will feel more comfortable and I will feel my most authentic self around you. So could we do that and do that thing? But people hear, I don't enjoy the way you're doing this, and it becomes defensive and shut down and shame and how dare
Mhm.
you? And it's like, I don't know how to help us get out of, I do know how to help us get out of that. Obviously, that's what I do for a living, but like
Yeah.
globally, besides shutting down Facebook, I don't know what to do to help us to get in a space. I hope that each of us considers getting into therapy and having these conversations of like, hey, sometimes I'm not perfect and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I can always grow. And it's helpful to listen to the people around me and get some, if I don't have the self awareness, some external perspective to help me grow my
Mhm.
self awareness and so on. I feel like I went on a
Yeah.
really long tangent right then, but saying I don't know is a good thing.
Like I said, I love the tangents because I
I
feel
love a
like,
tangent too.
yeah, in them, like there's the good stuff.
Yeah.
And this is what I think is also important for anybody who has like a neurospicy brain again, to feel like you have the space to explore the thoughts that are coming through.
Hmm.
I feel like it's such a gift to give somebody and to also receive,
Yes.
because while there might be like a fire hose of information sometimes, at the
Hmm.
same time, there's so much good shit in there.
Hmm. Hmm. And that
And
can be the thing too, where it's like, for those of you who might be listening who feel you are neuro neutral, neuro non-spicy, neuro mild, I don't know, whatever the,
never mind.
you feel like you can focus, you feel like you were meant to sit in this classroom in the United States and pass a test and use a Scantron, and that just makes sense to you. And I love that. And good fucking for you. I have no notes on that. Keep doing you, boo. But like, if you're recognizing that you are working with somebody or you are in a relationship with somebody, like, take a breath, be curious, not judgmental, ask questions,
Mhm,
have a fucking notepad sometimes. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, what if you started, hey, Meg's going to have a conversation with me. We're going to have a brainstorm about something for work. I know that she goes all over the place. I'm going to tell her, like, I want you to keep talking and I'm going to start taking some notes. And
mhm,
maybe you all could start doing some changes too while we're over here getting therapy to try to figure out how to operate in a world that doesn't appreciate neurospiciness, because you do appreciate and love us and cheer us on and want to be able to interact with us and utilize our fancy, amazing brains,
mhm,
and also in a way that doesn't build resentment for you because you feel like I can't keep up with me or I'm not listening to you or whatever that might be. Like, what if we could
mhm.
all kind of meet each other where we are?
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I definitely something I'm talking with my therapist. We meet, what is today? Tuesday. So we meet on Thursday. Like,
Mhm,
my son goes to school, to kindergarten this fall,
mhm,
and I don't know if he has, I mean, I can't diagnose him anyway, but he's also only 4, many things. But I do worry about the idea of him just having to sit still and focus.
yes.
He's gone to a Montessori school his whole life. Now he's at a different school that's not Montessori specific, but it's so beautifully, intentionally laid out and
Mhm,
nurturing, and a pre-K prep, and like just very that. And I
mhm,
hope that his kindergarten understands that 5-year-olds are not meant to sit for 3 hours straight, then play for a couple minutes, then sit for 3 more
mhm.
hours, and then go home. But I
Yeah.
do worry about that. And I want to make sure that I'm not putting my elementary school lowercase t trauma onto him in a way that makes him feel anxious as he ascends to the next level of education.
You know, that has actually been my experience where the teachers that I've had for my kids, because mine are older. My youngest is 11,
Mm.
and I actually had pulled them from school when they were little because of those feelings right there, being like, this is ridiculous. You're sitting all day long, and I know that's a struggle for you, and you're coming home and you're exhausted, and you're having to get up before your body's ready to get up. And I just noticed I'm at home, they were their worst version because they had to show up all day giving
Hello,
their
garbage
best version.
disposals.
Yes.
That's
And
us. Absolutely.
so then I had pulled them from school, and then went through a divorce a couple years later. And so they had to enter back into school because
Yeah.
it wasn't logistically
Mhm.
possible for us
Right.
to do life that way anymore together and co-parent.
Yeah.
So, but I can see it. My youngest hates it. Like
Yeah.
he's like it doesn't work for him, and there. So I try to give him as much well, I give him as much understanding as possible, but then also as many, pep talks as I can. Like, you don't have to,
Yeah.
if you're feeling this way, you can go talk to your teacher. Oh, what I was getting back to is, but thankfully, my experience has been that their teachers are way more understanding because I've been in communication with all of them about my
Mhm.
concerns. And then if anything does come up, and I do think this often is school district based,
Mhm.
or where you are in the country and all that.
Mhm.
But in particular, my youngest teachers have seemed to be way more aware of all of that. Thank
Mhm.
God.
Yeah, as much as I want to like tell them to fuck off with the low-rise jeans and some of our aughts fashion that they're trying to bring back, I really do say God bless Gen Z. Like, they are not putting up with shit. They are not
Mhm.
putting up with, and not all of them, not some of them can fuck off, but like they are not putting up with the patriarchy. They
Yeah.
are definitely participating in consumerism and capitalism to a certain extent, but they are much more aware of like, this is the bullshit y'all have been doing. What, how the fuck have you survived this long? Why are we
Yeah.
doing this? And so I am really appreciative. I hear that a lot. Like these new baby teachers, I don't, that's probably disrespectful, but like these
Mhm.
young, fresh out of school. See, I have all the respect. My mother was, and my mom retired in 2020, but
Mhm.
she continues to substitute teach because our healthcare system is shit in this country. And she had a partial mastectomy in December and had to go back to work for 3 months as a maternity leave
Mhm.
sub because she had to pay for her partial mastectomy. Like, what's the point of paying premiums and interest or insurance anyway? That's a different conversation for a different
Oh
podcast.
yeah.
So I have the most respect for teachers. So when I say baby teachers, I do apologize if that struck a chord with somebody. Please DM me and we'll talk about it. But I have so much excitement and respect for the future. And I irrationally hope that like bullying will be gone by the time my kids goes to kindergarten. No, that's not.
Mhm.
Kids do that. That's not necessary. But I am optimistic for that. But I really recognize that my 2-year-old, we've always made the joke, like she's the most oh my gosh, I've just lost the word when you're not neurodivergent.
Neurotypical.
Neurotypical. Oh my gosh, I wasn't going to get there. Wow. Wow. Talking about, so we've always made the joke that she's the most neurotypical of all of us because she seems to be able to like focus on certain things and like do puzzles
Yeah.
and not get distracted. And like, even as like a baby, like there were just certain things about her that she was just kind of like, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. No, I'm cool. I'll stay right here. How's it going?
Yeah.
But she does, like, there are certain moments where she'll wake up. Are we going to school? Yes. Sobs, breaks down, comes home
Oh,
from
honey.
school almost every single day. She's crying. And I'm like, I want to help you, but I also have to work because I can't afford to keep you home, which is another reason why I'm having this conversation with you and Mark about how do I monetize my podcast more and make things more asynchronous in terms of my income, because I want to
Mhm.
be able to have that be an option. And
Yeah.
wouldn't it be amazing too if I could establish some sort of, and don't feel bad for me, woe as white woman, but like some sort of generational wealth, like for my
Yeah.
kids. So if they wanted, I'm watching this show called Blown Away on Netflix, which if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's fascinating and amazing. Like,
Yeah.
what if they want to be a glass blower?
Oh, I
What if,
love Blown Away. Yes. Sorry. Took me a
hello,
minute.
love
Yes.
it. Katie, best friends. Like, what if they want to be a glass blower? I would love to be able to bankroll that. You go out to the Tacoma Glass Museum. I'm gonna get them all wrong. There's one in like
Mhm.
Copenhagen. Go over there. You've got a dare I say trust fund, but like you've got the
Mhm.
money to be able to bankroll the passion that you have for the thing that
Mhm.
may or may not make you money. And you don't feel beholden to some bullshit boss supervisor because that's
Mhm.
not how your brain works because you're neurospicy or whatever. Not all people who blow glass are neurospicy, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
that is the vision that I have and the motivation for making money. Like, yeah, I would love to live on a yacht in Majorca with Beyonce, of course, but like, it's not even about me now. It's the terror that I have for the world that we're leaving our children, and the stress that I feel about not having enough money. Again, we just moved into a brand new house, so
Mhm.
what privilege. But that's the thing, right? And I think that's the thing a lot of us are recognizing, like the thing where the boomers are like, oh, I bought a house for, blah, 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 whatever in 19. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, your house is now worth $3.2 million. Yes, you bought it for $87,000.
Mhm.
Cool. And not
Mhm.
only inflation, $87,000 is not what it was when you bought it. The property and space value is more because of insanity of inflation. So
Mhm.
that's the thing that is motivating me to have these conversations with you all, is to be able to be in a space where we are providing for our children in a meaningful way, where we're opening doors for them to not have to sit in a fucking US classroom if that's not the thing that makes sense to them and
Mhm.
doesn't, and we're just working against it for their entire life and they're fucking miserable. Like, do we have kids to make them miserable?
Oh, oh my God, that. Okay, that right there. There's two things. I'm going to try to make sure I remember this, but
Yes.
not to come away from the discussion around income and money and how it ties into us wanting to work together and create it for the kids. Because this is something else that like, this is my personal driver. Like, obviously, Mark and I have a shared vision, what we want to do with our businesses.
Mhm.
Pluck me out. My additional sort of like drive with this is and it is for women to be financially
Yes.
independent, frankly, because
Yes.
of my own experience with that. And also seeing so, and I wonder if this has a interplay with it. So many women held back from making the money they can make because there's this sort of, I I think this is a theory, not proven, that we undermine ourselves through these like people pleasing tendencies.
Yes.
We give away our value in hoping that in exchange eventually we'll get the money down the road, but we're too afraid to ask for it
Yeah.
and too afraid to price accordingly.
Yes.
So without editing, like I care about women making fucking money for themselves in business, and not just enough to be like, I get, oh, I can pay my bills and it's okay, and making all the apologies,
Yes.
but actually being like, no, I make enough so I can do the shit I want to do and
Mhm.
buy my kids the fucking Nikes that he wants and not freak out that I have to rent an instrument out of nowhere for $145.
I know.
Like all the things.
I make the joke about, because we're going to public school. We bought in a neighborhood where it's a brand new elementary school. Like, what privilege, again, privilege, privilege, privilege. Like, we can
Hmm.
walk there. Like, it's going to be amazing. And it's part of the reason why we bought this house. But
Hmm.
I make the joke about, like, oh, I'm not going to pay $2,700 a month in daycare. Sure. But what does travel soccer cost? And what about that cello rental? And yes. So I'm not
Hmm.
obtuse to that conversation, though I do hope it's less than
Oh
$2,700 a
no,
month.
no, 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 no. If you're gonna do travel, this is why I do not do travel. I'm like, my kid's number one, not good enough at sports. That sounds terrible, but
Oh, hey, look, if they're not into it too, we don't force, right? But
yeah,
like just this morning, my son and my daughter, I asked them if they wanted to take dance class. It's at school on Mondays at 10:30, like easy peasy for me, right?
yeah.
And this morning he was like, my dance teacher raised her voice yesterday. I said, were you not paying attention? He goes, yeah, Harper and I were not paying attention. I apologize, I just said her name, but luckily Harper's a very ambiguous name. So
Yes.
apologize to her parents, but um weren't paying attention. I was like, well, were you all not having fun? No, not really. Do you not enjoy dance? No, I don't think I do. Okay, you can stop. Yeah, I think I will. Okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with quitting.
Hmm.
If one thing, my children will have to be on a swim team for one summer because I need to make sure those motherfuckers know how to swim.
Oh,
End of
yes.
if you don't like
Yes.
swimming, if you
Hmm.
don't like swimming, I don't care. You don't have to be competitive. I'm not looking for the next Michael Phelps, but you will fucking know how to get yourself out of the water. So
Oh,
that's one thing that they have to do.
yes. Hmm.
I, write it down, put it in the books. I don't care. I'm fucking doing it. If they don't like it after that, fine. Just because I swam in high school, they don't have to. But
Hmm.
two, it's like, okay, you've committed to this for a season. We'll have that conversation or whatever. But dance class, he tried it out for 3 or 4 weeks and he's not into it. So he can stop. I think that's another thing too, where we like pressure our kids into these things and we have to be really good at them, like academics. And then we have this thing where they're forced to do this thing where they may be good at it or maybe not be good at it, but they're doing it because we want them to do it. And I think that's another
Hmm.
intentional space where we can help our children who may or may not be neurospicy advocate for themselves, feel comfortable and vulnerable and discussing, like, I don't like this. And I know, like, last night we were doing shuffle hop step and I filmed it and put it on Facebook for grandma. Like,
Hmm.
I was so excited for him. I couldn't care fucking less about dance. I mean, I actually love the ballet. Neither here nor there. I'm not a dancer. But that's fine, right? Like, and then this morning he was able to have that conversation with me, like, given the fact that you were so excited last night, I still also don't like it. And I think that's a different tangent, but I just want to hold the space for us to try to help the future generation where they feel entitled to make the money that they're owed. And they feel open to be able to be vulnerable and have these conversations and say, I don't understand that, or I don't know how to do that yet. And I maybe never will. And that's okay. And like,
Hmm.
hoping to pass my shit not onto the children. They're already fucked in terms of the allergies I've given them. So like, let's maybe not pass on the bullshit of the, hovering parents of soccer and all of that. But yes, also in Texas, no way am I going to do any sort of travel anything. We're not traveling
Oh,
9 hours to get to still in Texas.
yeah. Well, and then my whole thing is that it isn't just the kids signing up, it's the whole family signing up. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
which, yeah, that is a whole other thing. But there was, while you're talking, like, I got full body chills about this whole like passing the things on when it comes
Yeah.
to being able to recognize your yeses or your nos.
Right.
That's my own interpretation of what you said, but
Yes.
yours is more
Yes.
specifically around
Oh,
you
that's a
don't
much
like
more succinct and cogent way of putting why I just rambled. Yes, correct.
okay.
We
Well,
make no apologies here, though, right? This is what we're doing.
yeah. Well, I think because it translates as an adult with this inability, or all of a sudden you have to
Yes.
unravel these years of it, and it results in, for me, I, a marriage that should have been a no for me. Yes, thankfully I have the kids. Yes, I learned a lot. Yes, blah, 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 all the
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, if I had learned to recognize my own yeses or nos and how that feels in my body and
Right.
and not overriding this stuff.
Yes.
That's personal side. Even in business, then you end up down the road saying yes to things because it was a path
Yes.
that seemed to be, make sense or
Yes.
whatever.
And it's important to acknowledge that we don't function in silos. And as good as I am at compartmentalizing in terms of like hearing a really rough story from a client one day, that I can also then go and play Hot Wheels with my kids afterwards and not be sobbing. Like I can compartmentalize those things, but all of the things that we do impact all parts of our lives. And so it would be obtuse of us to say like, oh, well, that was something that didn't, me being able to say no, not being able to say no in my personal life does not compute into my professional life. Absolutely, it does. It does. And it's really important for us to recognize that no is a full sentence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to tell you why. Depending on the relationship you have and the intellectual and emotional labor you're willing to expend, you certainly can express that to a certain person as you so deem appropriate. But yeah, it's just really tough. And I don't want to get into like toxic individualism, because we do certainly need to continue to show up and rally for better healthcare and access to health concerns. And like I sit in a place of privilege where certain things don't impact me, but I also don't want to avert my eyes because I can. I want to show up and participate and be a good global citizen, but also understanding, not but, because do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also being able to be in a space where you're like, you get this one hectic life, and how do you be intentional about living it to the most authentic way that you can? There's a longitudinal study that's been done at the University of Texas that shows like the people who have the most space for compassion are the people who have the strongest boundaries, because they're not filling their time and energy with resentment. So if you're telling people, this is what I need, this is how I feel, this is what I want to do, this is what I don't want to do,
Mm-hmm.
you have so much more space to be like, yes to this and yes to that, because I said no to these. I mean, that's like, I'm not saying anything groundbreaking, but like,
Yeah.
that's longitudinally studied, folks. That is a real thing. That if you say no more in the places where they are inauthentic to you, you are not walking around resentful. And sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes great aunt somebody calls and they insist that you make this pie, and for the Thanksgiving, which I'm not sure we should probably even be calling it that anymore in the United States, maybe by this year we'll come up with something less Indigenous people murdery, but like for the 4th of July, you have to make this pie, right? That's also a
Yeah.
terrible. It all sucks.
There's no good holidays. There really
Shit.
isn't. You
Veterans
can't.
Day, we like to
Each
vet
one.
some of the
Your
anyway,
birthday. A birthday.
right? Like, okay, so she really needs this for her birthday, and you are very busy, and that is and it's a very long and intentional pie, but you can make it happen. So you intentionally decided to make the choice to make the pie, but you did it with intention. And yeah, you're still a little, very rarely is any one thing all one thing. There's a little resentment there, but you found a way to make it work, and you did it intentionally. Or sometimes you tell great aunt whatever, no, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
But I think that's another piece too, is like, I'm gonna go off on another tangent, but like, yes, the best thing to do for many people, and I can't even say that fully with a straight face, is to fully shut off on your vacation. You're going away, right? Like da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Shut the computer off, turn off access to the email on your phone, blah blah blah. But I have so many clients who are like, yeah, but Sunday I get the Sunday scaries, and then Monday morning is a fucking nightmare because I got to be on it's digging through 300 emails. And I'm like, what if you and your partner or your family or whoever it is you're going with, what if you say like, I'm gonna take 30 minutes during lunch on Wednesday. I'm going to go sit in a room. I'm going to scroll through my email intentionally, delete the stuff that's not important to me, flag the stuff that is, maybe even respond a little bit, but I'm going to set a timer. And that, like, it's obtuse of us again to think that we can just shut certain parts of our life off sometimes. And some of us can. Like, I'm very lucky that I have a client load who basically doesn't need anything from me. So when I'm gone, if I'm not seeing any of them, I really can kind of do that. What privilege. But as long as we're being intentional about the places where we're compromising, like we're thinking about it, then that's where we avoid some of that resentment, because we're not doing it because we're afraid of rejection sensitive dysphoria. We're doing it because that makes us intentionally feel better about the situation. We were able to do this friend thing for a friend or a family member. I'm going to set myself up for success on Monday while I'm annoyed to having to do it on Wednesday. This annoyance is not this bullshit overwhelm on Monday.
Yeah.
It's just being intentional.
So would you call this like pre-decisions, so that beforehand you have these sort of pre-decisions made around how you are allocating your time and energy that feels right to you as a way of, I'll just use it again, like within the
Yeah,
context of
sure,
of what you do for a living.
sure.
So instead of feeling like a pinball when, if a client is messaging you out at 7 o'clock on a Thursday and you're at your kid's game and you feel pulled to respond, if maybe there's pre-decisions made of, no matter what, I'm going to respond up to 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
I'm off all the time on Saturday, but I
Yes.
am going to create a window, like what you're talking about,
Yes.
like a half an hour on Sunday, because I know even though I want to be off all weekend,
Yes.
I know that still generates for me a level of additional work that lends
Yes.
itself to create more anxiety. But if
Yes.
I create a half an hour window from 4:30 to 5 before I
Mhm.
have dinner and when there's a lull,
Yes.
then I can at least keep up. But then
Yes.
can that help eliminate that stress where it's like it almost feels like you're living in this like sort of in between space, this pull where you're going, for myself, I don't want to do this, but I don't want them to be upset with me. And if they're upset with me, maybe they're going to stop working with me and
Uh-huh.
all that.
That's the thing though, right? So yes, 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 yes. And then you did say
Mhm.
something like was it decision or like,
Pre-decision. Yeah.
I wonder if we could come up with a word that is a little more pencil and a little less in stone, because decision sounds like I'm going to do this, but like some pre-flexibility or I don't know.
Mhm.
But yes, for argument's sake, because let's not spend our time coming up with a different word, but just
Yeah.
acknowledging we want to put a little more flexibility in there.
Yeah.
Pre-decisions are a great idea because you've communicated, first of all, with your family. So you're
Mhm.
telling your children, your partner, your spouse, whoever, your family, whoever you live with, your
Mhm.
roommates, hey, 4:30 on Sundays is my phone time. I'm gonna run in my
Yeah.
office. We're gonna put on a couple episodes of Bluey, or depending on the age of your children.
Mhm.
Um, and that's fine because sometimes life happens. And as much as we want to be the 100% focused parent all the time, first of all, I actually don't, because if I'm trying to pretend to do that, then I'm being inauthentic and I'm burning myself out. So sometimes I need
Mhm.
to walk away. Sometimes I need to poop on a toilet by myself and have nobody bothering me. And that's
Oh,
not a
so
problem.
many stories. Someday we'll talk about that.
Yes. I literally have a picture, and God bless my children were not doing this. I have a picture. Everyone poops, whatever. On the
Mhm.
toilet, my
Mhm.
dog's paws under
Yeah.
under the he's,
Mhm.
oh, I just woke him up. Sorry, buddy. Like, sir, please, please.
Oh,
But yeah,
I got
so
kids' fingers coming through and then
oh, I have
recordings of
those
them
too, but
banging.
luckily this most recent one was just the dog, of course.
Yeah.
He's my firstborn, right? But so, and setting that gosh, I've actually had this conversation with clients recently.
Yeah.
Sometimes I talk to people about their work environments, and it's not all about just interpersonal romantic relationships or kids or family. It is talking about like, how do I setting that boundary. When you meet with a client for the first time, give them
Mhm.
your schedule. Tell
Yeah.
them these are the days that I work. Now, this is different for me because obviously I work in a very specific, like I see you on Tuesdays at 11 a.m.
Mhm.
Fine. But like some of you who get client calls at different times or whatever, the expectation has been set from the beginning. Now, if they really need you, or they have a different expectation, or they're willing to pay you for your time in a different way, and they're able to
Mhm.
come back, like, I work this time, and on Sundays at 4 o'clock is when you're going to get me if you need something over the weekend. Otherwise, I'll see you on Monday. And they're like, well, I'd like to be able to access your time on Saturdays at 1 p.m. during your kid's nap. And here's an extra financial consideration, or that
Mhm.
makes sense to you. Like, have, again, intention. What am I going through saying? Everything that we're doing right here is intentional. None of
Yeah.
it is by haphazard, and you're expressing that up front. So you've already set that boundary. So when they
Mhm.
email you, and like having that conversation with your boss is a lot harder too, because but I've had this conversation where like I have sent emails late at night when I
Mhm.
was a supervisor because
Yeah.
something pops into my mind. And if I don't do it right now, there's a very good chance that I'm not going to get it done. So
Mhm.
I will tell my kids, like,
Mhm.
hey, I need to send a work email real quick. I'll be right back.
Mhm.
Or it's just me and my husband watching Blown Away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Right?
Mhm.
Fine. But again, there's communication, there's intention. And I'll put in the email, or there's already an expectation because you know me well enough by now. If I email you at 9 o'clock at night, please don't fucking respond. It just meant that's when I was thinking about it.
Mhm.
Now, if you happen to have bandwidth and it's going to make you stressed out, I got it. Like, first of all, why are you checking your email at 9 o'clock at night? We'll talk about that boundary for yourself. But like
Mhm.
the communication, and easier
Yeah.
said than some of your bosses are assholes, and we know that, which is why some of us are trying to get into these things for ourselves so we don't have to have a boss. But the more that we can try to have these conversations and try to be more intentional about, like, no, 6 to 7 is dinner, or my son's got to like, send your boss your soccer schedule.
Yeah.
We have a soccer match Thursday at 6 p.m. Motherfucker, don't email me. Or if you do, I will talk to you Friday morning at 8 or whatever time it is you go in. But less on the aggressive side there because I got a little spicy. But coming back to, like, if you get a new client coming in, just express, like, what are your hours? Here are my hours. I do spend Sundays for about an hour. I will be checking in. So if you do have something coming up over the weekend, feel free to shoot it to me in an email, and I'll probably get to it on Sunday. Give it a think and give you a cogent response on Monday, or I don't know, whatever your schedules are. Not everyone has the same schedule. But again, it's all about being intentional and setting that boundary and the expectation.
That, yes. And it is figuring out exactly how it works for you. Cause I think what you'd said earlier with the decision, I think of it like a pendulum. Like you can go too far one way and then not have room. And that's my tendency is I will decide like I'll realize, oh, I'm doing this thing. So now I need to create these boundaries. And then I get upset when I enforce my boundaries immediately and it's met with resistance. And so I make it a them problem when actually I didn't engage in any conversation around it, which sometimes you don't have to, but sometimes you do.
Yeah. I think so. And that's interesting though, that you mentioned that. First of all, I say the pendulum has swung too far the other way a lot because I feel like we overcorrect a lot in a lot of things. But isn't that interesting? Because you said pre-decisions. And what did I say? I was like, we got to come up with a different word that makes it feel less carved in stone. Because if 4 to 5 is a thing, but then the masters are on and we're having a master's party, is 4 to 5 really going to be the time that I'm sending that email out? And maybe you don't send an email communication to all of your clients saying, hey, y'all, I'm having a master's party. So blah, blah, blah. And I'm using that as an example because we had just a couple people over, but I made, the chicken salad and the egg salad and the caramel popcorn and all that. So because we're a golf family, what privilege. But yeah, like sometimes if we can be more flexible about it, the better, while holding the bound, like where appropriate, intentionally being flexible, right? We're making great Aunt Susan's pie for her birthday because we intentionally decided to do that. That's our compromise. That's our flexibility. A little bit of resentment, mostly not. Something else comes up. I'm holding this boundary. This is the time that I have. This is the only time I have. I'm sorry that you're calling me at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I'll see you at 4. Fine. Also, I'm communicating that though. And it is easier to do it up top. I had a client once, and I can't, obviously HIPAA can't get into too many details, but she was like, how do I fix this? And I was like, okay, here's how we're going to try to like unpack some of this distress. And here's what we can do moving forward with new clients is setting this expectation. Like you have this many things to do, this many, I'm not going to get into details. Like you have this much time to do this many things. And if we don't do this time, that's fine. But then this is the thing that happens on this thing. If this thing didn't happen, because that's the bandwidth that we have for your case, for your whatever. And so for these people, what if we start to express that now in a soft way, in a very appropriate, assertive way, but also understanding like you can't walk all over me. But we can try to start setting those expectations up top in fresh starts with people, which is hard because we were taught, going back to earlier in conversation, to bend over backwards to make people smile and happy and laugh. And that's our job, is to make everybody else happy at the expense of our sanity.
Yes. Which means just thinking that saying yes to everything does that.
Yes. And again, like, was I talking to my therapist or a client? No, I was talking to Mark about half-assing stuff. I was like, it was a man. I do have male clients, but I was like, who was that? They felt like they were anyway, doesn't matter. It was Mark. I was saying, like, I feel like I'm half-assing a number of things. And while I feel very good, like I am in this chair and I am focused on my clients, and that feels really great. But then I feel like I'm kind of half-assing like my social media, and like I'm trying to get at this, I'm trying to, like, my podcast, I am in the conversation with that person in that moment for that hour, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. But there are so many other things where I'd like to whole ass and half ass, not like zero ass some things and whole ass the others. And how do I be intentional about that? I was talking about that with Mark last week. Stop.
I love that. Cause that term has always made me happy because there's like that whole spectrum of from whole to half to zero I've seen, and like figuring out where you want to land and in what area.
I need the tattoo. Very rarely is any one thing all one thing. And it's a very long saying, but I don't know how to condense it anymore. And I've said it so many times that I'm okay with it. Very rarely is any one thing all one thing.
Yeah.
Like, I like, there's so many examples that I'm like, my brain has just stopped working. I've had a brain moment because I like say this, say this, say this, say this, because there's so many things. And I think that, again, coming back to like the binary of good guy, bad guy, like sometimes it's okay to work during your kid's soccer game. I don't know. Maybe it's not because you're the coach, so don't do that. But like, or your other work, you are working as a coach as well. But like, sometimes it's okay on a Sunday afternoon to pick up your work email. Sometimes it's okay to tell a client no. Sometimes it's okay to a client really needs something and you have a little bit of space for it. So you're going to say yes, and you're going to acknowledge, but you're going to communicate and acknowledge like, this isn't the standard, but I do actually have a little more bandwidth or runway to be able to do this. So let me show you how to do this, or let me help you with this.
Yeah.
Understanding the expectations. Like, very rarely is any one thing all one thing. And the more that we can start understanding, like, not paying attention to somebody or not doing something doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you're functioning in a different way. We're walking away from the shame. We're leaving it behind. We're just trying to get through life the best we can.
Okay. That is beautifully put. I'm going to put it in a bow.
I know. I was like, we have been talking forever and I love it. I could keep talking.
We have, and I think there's so much more I want to explore. I have more notes. I mean, I will talk to you. We will end this. We will say goodbye with the recording, but we will continue our conversation after I stop this so we can get this going for more.
Yes.
So thank you,
Perfect.
Megan.
That's my pleasure. It's my absolute pleasure.
Okay.